Welcome everyone to being at home with George during COVID. I'm excited to talk to you this week, as I am every week. And it's interesting because to me, it seems that there's a lot of forest fires as what I would call other fires. The world seems to be on fire. So the question I have is how to find comfort when the world is on fire. And when I talk about fire, I'm talking about the physical fires, especially, it's all over the world in the rainforests as well as all over the United States, Colorado, California, Oregon, even Southern California. It's just fires are burning, and it's the ecology. And I remember Death Valley the other day was 131 degrees Fahrenheit. So this idea of fire, and also the fire of hatred, the fire of anger, the fire of frustration, fear, Mother Nature, and there's cause and effect. And so we may not understand where all this is coming from. And now that it's happening, it's not so much the cause, it's about how do we put out the fire, how do we control it so it doesn't burn everything. A lot of homes, a lot of people have lost their homes and whatnot. And so when I like to talk about this idea of home, where is home? If home is where the heart is, and your home is on fire or burnt down, where do you go? What can you do? So I'm talking about it in the context of, I'm not in a situation where my home is burned down in terms of physically burning down, but in terms of being in a home full of hate, anger, frustration. I can relate to that a little bit. But the challenge is, how can we rebuild? Do we want to rebuild? And the question here is, I'm making the assumption, yes, we need to rebuild. We want to rebuild. And how do we rebuild? And this ties into what I normally say at the beginning of this presentation is we have to hold the possibility that we can embrace the pain, the hurt, in this case, the anger, the frustration, whatever it is, the sadness. How do we embrace that and at the same time generate the hope? And so it's a tricky beast because sometimes I found in my own experience that I tend to want to go right from the pain to the generating hope and not really giving enough time, enough space for the hurt, the pain, whatever it is, to really be felt and accepted. Not that I want to accept it, but the only way out is through it, is to really make space for it and embrace it in a way that, okay, this is what's happening, and how can I relate to this in a way that energizes me? I relate to it in a dynamic, energetic way. And so to me, a lot of it is about feeling how we're feeling so that we can heal. And it's about healing, and that because the nervous system is programmed to move towards pleasant and away from unpleasant, and the space out when it's neither, is a big challenge because it's painful and it hurts when we embrace the hurt. It's just very unpleasant, but there has to be enough of that. And the challenge is, how do we hold that hurt without being so identified with it that we become the hurt, we become the hatred, we become the anger, the frustration, and that we're always walking around on fire. And so this idea of fire, and some people say it's purification. I think if my house burnt down, I don't know if I would see it that way, but things happen, and it's really, how do we embrace that and then begin again, or how do we rebuild? So the feeling and the healing is really important. And then, when you lose everything and starting over, I remember the fires several years ago when I was visiting my friend in Santa Rosa. And after I left there, I went down to Oakland to participate in a conference or a workshop. And I can remember being in the hotel in Oakland, even though that was miles away from where the fires were. I could smell the smoke. It was all over the place. And I had talked to my friend, and he said most of his neighbors had lost their homes, and that it happened so quickly that people didn't even have a chance to grab their passport or their wallet or their purses or whatever And I had heard a story of one guy that actually was found with his hand on the doorknob. So it's a really devastating thing that's happened. And of course, there's the fires of racial injustice, the fires of misogyny, the fires of just seeing other people as things and not a person. And then there's the coronavirus, which doesn't discriminate, and it just affects whoever. It just goes wherever it's allowed to go. And so this whole idea of home is where the heart is, and this is what I know in my experience of that, is that years ago I remember going to Hong Kong for a couple of weeks, and I was in Hong Kong and I realized that, yeah, I'm in a foreign country, but I feel at home. And so what was up with that? Well, it was because I was at home with myself. I had made peace with a lot of the demons, a lot of the fires of desire, hatred, fear, frustration, and that I had a semblance of peace. And so inside of me, I was connected to that masterpiece, that divine spark, that Buddha nature, that Christ consciousness that allows me to make peace with that. And I realized that it doesn't matter where I go, and it doesn't matter if I have a home to call my own or a place to rest my head, or if my house were to burn down, it would be frustrating, it would be sad, but at the same time, I still have my heart. I still have me. And maybe that's the only thing we can think about, is how do we heal and make the home within the primary object, the internal work of being at peace with ourselves, with the temple within. And maybe that's one way to deal with this. It doesn't minimize the things happen. And once again, it's a tricky beast, because we can't just say, okay, my house burned down, okay, I'm going to let it go and just move on. No, there's a lot of things that have to be felt and experienced and made peace with. And at the same time, it's not like we just do that without generating hope. We can do both, and we have to focus on beginning again and having the opportunity, but seeing it as an opportunity to rebuild and rebuild better, or build back better. We need to be able to do that. And in this time of crisis, as a country, as a community, as individuals, we have to, as bad as things are, as long as we have hope, we have help, we have a way out. And so this idea of embracing whatever it is, and then making a choice between stimulus and response. How do we relate to this situation in a way that empowers, motivates, inspires us, so that we can build back better? We can actually understand that I still have my heart. Even though I don't have the home, I still have a home that's here, and wherever I go, there I am. And so it's not minimizing it, but it's understanding that it's important that even when everything is taken away, we have our heart, and we have this ability to train ourselves, to love ourselves, to have compassion, and to try to find the good, try to find this silver lining in the cloud, and that the world is on fire, and the fire could be actual fire, or it could be hate, it could be anger, it could be frustration, it could be fear, it could be any of those emotions that separate us, that hinder us from being able to be present for ourselves and others, and hinders us from just being kind and being compassionate and being loving. And so it's a lot going on right now. There's a lot of revelations about things that are happening, that have happened around the COVID, and whether we got the information or not, whether people are doing other things. And we can talk about things at home. Like, there's a lot of people that don't know how long they're going to be in their homes. And so even though the fire's not going to take their home, being evicted, or not having jobs, not having the money to pay mortgages or rent, all of that is right in our face right now. Not having enough money so that we could feed our family, with people going to bed hungry. So there's so many things that we have to attend to, and that we have to figure out, how do we help each other to move through these crises, through these things, and not lose heart. Another saying, not to lose heart, not to lose hope, and not to have so much hope without having a way forward. So the hope is helpful, but we still have to do the work, and we still have to have a way. And so how do we rebuild? How do we reconnect? How do we heal? And so from my experience, the healing has to do with being aware of what's happening, accepting it, embracing whatever it is, and generating a hope. Okay, this is what's happening. How can I make this work? Or how can I build back better? How can I relate to it in a way where I can recreate or begin again?